Hello again. It's a lovely winter's morning. I want to do a video covering the realities of UK police state terror and the impact it has on people's lives, both mentally and physically, because we're seeing more of this and we will see more of it when people are harassed for what they say and what they think. So this is an alarming trend. So videos like this might help people. I watch with great interest, although of course not pleasure, the experiences of George Galloway, who I believe now operates in exile, and how he and his wife were terrorized at, I think it was Gatwick Airport. And he talks about the impact that had on their physical and mental health. I think he's taking quite a bit of medication for his heart after it, and I'm sure his wife has suffered much too. And I wish them well, but I understand how they feel. When Adam Lloyd, 1812, Northumbria Police, and his colleagues forced their way into my property, it was about humiliation. It was about degradation, showing they can violate your privacy, showing that they can will enter your home, your sanctuary, your privacy. Whatever our homes are, it's our private place, and they want to show they can violate that at will if you say something that's inconvenient. And it had a terrible impact on myself, my wife, both mentally and physically. My wife was terrorized by them, traumatized for over 2 hours, and still remains traumatized. And I want to now just explain to you why they did this to me. Uh, and it all really does relate to the secondary objective of the FCA. It's had its origins in Jeremy Hunt's time. Rachel Reeves with her Leeds reformers, just a rip-off of Hunt's Edinburgh reforms with a bit added to it. And it's about using the financial services sector to drive growth, try to encourage people to invest more money in the stock market versus cash and so on. Not a bad thing, but if it's done responsibly, of course. Now, me being the whistleblower to the FCA, uh, they failed to act on my credible warnings, which I published on my other channel. You can see in the early videos. I think it's 2 and 3. And straight away, they were very unhappy with uh, my approach to it, because I said, you need to first understand the human impact of the catastrophic failures that you made in this case, the Wealth Tech case, over 9 years leading to, the allegations suggest, an £80 million shortfall. You need to confront those catastrophic failures, and you need to remember who funds you and who you serve. The FCA are funded by clients. They're funded by a levy on businesses, which is paid out of fees clients pay to them. So clients fund the FCA. The FCA has no money. And they didn't like the reality that I was putting to them, that they were placing, hiding via prejudice, perversion of prejudice, they were placing their own reputation above the welfare of those they'd so badly failed. And I said to them, these people have done nothing wrong. They've done everything right. And they should not have to bear the burden of this recovery process, this audit and recovery process. They should be refunded in full. You and the Treasury should take on the risk of recovery from John Dance if you can prove your allegations. They didn't like that. They were furious. They um, they wanted to. They warned me against investigating. I explained my investigation was related to the range of their catastrophic errors and how it impacted clients. The errors have gone right away from supervision to intelligence, which includes whistleblowing, enforcement, money laundering, and everything really. It's the embodiment of failure over a 9 year period. And they tried to threaten and intimidate me about doing this. Then originally, when they got in contact, they saw me as a key witness and said, you're a key witness, would like a witness statement. So words to that effect. And I said, yeah, it cannot be done in the framework you want it to be done, which is we will not discuss any of our actions or inactions prior to our intervention in April 2023. So effectively, they wanted to draft a witness statement for me and airbrush out all their failures, whereas the failures are an integral part of understanding the context of the allegations they've made against John. Um, and I wouldn't go along with that. And I said, I'm deeply, deeply concerned about this conflict of interest between you as a regulator and as a prosecutor. And then we started to get more threats, got some more threats after loss to the races, non-cooperation, and so on and so forth, which is complete nonsense. I provided them with more intelligence than they asked for. After loss of the races, there are 3 referrals to them from me as a result of that book. One being one of John's trainers, who ironically had reported serious concerns about potential money laundering and misuse of client assets to the British Horse Racing Association in 2016, and also advised them to contact the FCA. So their investigation, this super duper lightning quick investigation, hadn't had enough intelligence to go as far as a talk to John's trainers or a trainer. Extraordinary. Another one, an IFA had made a large claim regarding an IHT portfolio that had been poorly administered. The client had missed out on tax relief. That resulted in a large claim. I told them that there was a potential issue with the way complaints were being handled and documented, and to look into this. Another one was a client and founder investor in John's investment vehicle. So they hadn't even gone to that extent of looking in to who were the investors in John's investment vehicle, which created Vertum Asset Management and then on to Wealth Tech. And this person was a client and an investor, and they hadn't even contacted him. That came from me. So their non-cooperation is absurd, and it was designed to be a threat, a veiled threat to my career. Now, the other thing you don't know, because I've spoken a lot about coordinated coercion, and it's a really important aspect, actually. Because at the time the FCA intervened in Wealth Tech, just looking around, it's really nice. I actually made them aware that my research colleagues, and I were looking into this awful trade of vulnerable people through the family court system into the hands of private equity-owned agencies. And we said that there's a district judge that's of particular interest to us in terms of her history in the industry. Bearing in mind, Rachel Hudson, who I was referring to but didn't name at this time, she isn't the sole source of our interest. She's just one source of it. She's of interest because of her time in the industry and the development of her career in the industry. And I also made South Tyneside Council aware that we were looking deeply into this trade and how it was embedded in the financial system, how we believed it related to the promotion of private assets in terms of the government and the regulators' keenness to increase British savers' exposure to private assets, which is private equity. It's important to realise that the involvement of private equity in the fostering and accommodation industry of children placed under long-term care orders isn't exclusively private assets. There are many other aspects to it, but it's embedded within that. And we said that we're concerned about this trade with the emotional sterilisation of children, and children being fed into long-term care orders rather than reconciled with their families where it is possible. My own daughter's had her heritage destroyed by South Tyneside Council to fit this model, and both sides are aware, and we're saying we're concerned. So in terms of the secondary objective, the government, Conservative government, now Labour government, very keen to give the FCA a free pass on Wealth Tech. No, never once. Jeremy Hunt was aware, Rachel Reeves was aware, so were their junior officials who work with them. And never once do they say to the FCA, given what you say, that the extent of this alleged fraud over 9 years, can you reassure us that no one else is doing this? And can you tell us what you've done to strengthen the system to make sure it never happen again? No one's done that. because of the secondary objective, of course. So the FCA don't want to apologise, don't want to confront the reality of their failures and the human tragedy of that, and the government don't want to hold them to account because of this secondary objective, which I just explained to you. I've also got this coordinated coercion, which is eventually started with Tyneside Council, Deirdre Ryan, etc., saying that if you continue with these investigations, then we will block your access to your daughter. I called her out on that in a public meeting where other people were there and said, you threaten me against, if I expose these crimes against humanity in relation to my daughter and other children as well, being emotionally sterilised, to fit this long-term care order model, where there's been an explosion of it, to be traded with private equity. If you look at the care industry, the growth of long-term care orders fits like a glove the increased involvement of private equity in this space, because private equity want these long-term government-backed inflation-linked cash flows that come from it. The incentives are all wrong. There's a profit motive in there, which is leading local authorities to destroy families rather than to repair families. And our daughter has suffered cultural genocide to fit this model. She's had her Polish heritage destroyed. So I called out coercion from both sides. So, the FCA couldn't move on me because I called out their coercion, their threats. Don't do your investigation, and trying to bully me and saying I wasn't cooperating because I wouldn't write a witness statement based on their airbrushed version of reality. So we knew that the other link was Rachel Hudson. And this is why my devices were taken. I'll explain to you why. Lloyd comes in, terrorizes me and my wife, assaults me in the back of the car. My wife's left terrorized, and he takes my devices, and even my wife's devices, and 2 work devices. Because what they want to do is they want to emotionally, physically, and financially break you. Yeah, I called to my wife, turn off because I wanted to protect my work assets, my work devices, because they have nothing to do with this at all. They've only ever been used for work, and they know that. They already know that. And they bullied and pushed past her, didn't even explain the acts that they were working under, and seized those assets. And in the back of Lloyd's car, I put that to his hapless colleague, and he admitted that he failed to explain to Magdalena why he was pushing past her and why she shouldn't turn off my work devices. He bullied his way past her. Now, they want to do this because what they want to do is they want to see what's on those devices. Because, yes, my colleagues and I have conducted quite a lot of research, a deep analysis into the FCA, South Tyneside Council, and a number of family court officials. But what they don't realise is the overwhelming amount of that research. In fact, pretty much all of it. It's never been on my devices, because that's not my role in investigating corruption. We all have our specialisms, and my role is analysing a system, an ecosystem. How does it work? How do people interact? Studying their narrative, studying their behaviour. And I say to colleagues, if you want to find corruption, you need to look at this person, this area, and this relationship. And they follow up on that. They're far, far more clever than I am on this area. I do the macro stuff. Where will it be? Go and look here. So they won't find what they're looking for. And in many ways now, they're in a situation that I might get more police state terror. I had that strange altercation last night. Of course, they want to subject me to more police state terror. But all they will do is they will lead to more disclosures. And really, to destroy me, they have to destroy themselves. And there's only one of me, and there's lots of them. So really, the common sense thing is to talk. Rachel Hudson's position is untenable. She has to realise that and just confront what she's done. The common theme, because of course they use this absurd pretext of me spray painting her car, which they know I have not done. to try to justify it. Yet we are in a system now, a reality now, where people invent reality via narrative. Look at the Dawn Sturgis inquiry. There is no credible aspect to that. The two alleged Russian agents, I think possibly they were spies, but information gatherers, not assassins, levitated their way down midday on a Sunday afternoon, a densely populated um, cul-de-sac without protective clothing, and sprayed a deadly nerve agent on an open-fronted house where the residents were at home on the door handle, and then somehow levitated it back out of it. Nobody saw them, no images captured, nothing. Hughes was merely regurgitating an invented narrative because he wanted it to serve a conclusion that it was Russia. It's simply not sustainable. And they've done the same here. They wanted to create a reality where they could justify forcing their way into the house and subjecting me to police state terror. So they invented this absurd notion that 9 and 10 months earlier, I had spray painted the car of a district judge. Don't know where she lives. Of course, there's no CCTV. So it's the same levitation that the Russian agents apparently, except for me, they were clumsy enough in my interview where essentially they asked me a question and said, well, because you received this email from the family court, you took out you vented your fury by spray painting the car, not realizing that email was received a couple of months after the alleged second incident. So not only levitation, I would need a time machine as well. The other serious mistake they made was they questioned, because we knew Hudson was the last link of this coordinated coercion. On my previous channel, I'd spoken about a judge on notice for corruption and overseeing falsification of evidence, and and feeding children into this long-term care order model, and overseeing the trade with private equity. When that was published, she must have panicked, and she took the bait and stepped forward and ordered this police state terror, because in my police interview, I was asked about that interview, and they said, would this constitute harassment? She was never mentioned. I knew they were watching. We knew she was watching. We knew South Tyneside Council were watching. We could see who was watching. And they took the bait and came forward. And it's a disaster for them, because it shows the coordinated coercion, FCA, South Tyneside Council, Rachel Hudson, and the family court in Newcastle. Coordinated coercion, all relating to the financial services system, and a secondary objective, not wanting people to know that the FCA prioritise their own reputation over the victims of financial scandals, even when those victims have been made victims through their own catastrophic error. That doesn't fit the secondary objective model. And this illicit trade, this awful, awful trade of children being emotionally sterilised from their families, in our case, cultural genocide, Polish heritage destroyed, so our child can be packaged up as a cash generative asset, and others as well, and traded with private equity. And how this fits in with private assets and the motivation of private equity to gain more access to this industry, to grow even further into it. And what they've already achieved massive growth in recent years, and you can see that, and I've posted articles alluding to this and the concerns from it as well. So you can see how it all fits together. It's all the same case now. Yeah, it's all the same case. We knew this coordinated coercion was there. The FCA couldn't move because I blocked them and called them out. South Tyneside Council couldn't move because I called out Deirdre Ryan that she had threatened if I continued with both investigations, they would block access to our daughters. They knew if they did, straight away it's documented. So Rachel Hudson was the last piece, and that's why we made these videos, because we knew she was watching and we knew she would move, and she's used police state terror to do it. We know that Adam Lloyd was surveilling my phone before. When they're forced to release this order, which they won't do so far, I've asked to see this order. It'll be very, very interesting. There's a number of interesting things about Adam Lloyd that we need to go into as well. But it's all unnecessary if people talk. It's the same as the situation with Russia. Invent this reality. I don't condone the invasion, but to say it's an unprovoked invasion is false. To say that the Russians had no justifiable concerns about NATO expansion and the treatment of ethnic Russians in Ukraine is completely false. This warmongering from Europe saying that we must prepare for a war with Russia, it's inevitable, is false. It's trying to cover up a disastrous proxy war in Ukraine, which has spectacularly failed and left huge loss of life and huge loss of money. So you have to invent a reality to change the way people see things. You use narrative to create a whole new reality. It's all the same pattern. But just as with me, we can continue fighting. We've got a lot of information we can put out. So the more they want to dig in, the more we'll have to release, or you can talk. Our daughter needs to come home. We need to repair her Polish heritage that she's got a right to celebrate and enjoy, and they will need to compensate her for what they've done. Just as with Russia, nobody will benefit from war. People will suffer immeasurably from war. There is no need for war. If you look at Merz in Germany, his comments, why do the German people need war with Russia? They don't need war with Russia. Why do the British people need war with Russia? They don't need war with Russia. None of it. It's all to cover a failed proxy war. Talk to Russia, understand their concerns. Yes, of course, Russia will have to understand the concerns of Ukraine and Europe as well. Work together. There doesn't need to be war. Just like in my situation, they want to dig in, they can try to destroy me, but they'll destroy themselves as well. But we can talk, and it can be fixed. But it needs truth, not phony narrative. Take care. Bye.